Good afternoon, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you to Vorne Presents the 6 reports every manufacturer needs. My name's Adam Moran. I'm the VP of Sales of Vorne, and we will be taking you through a tour of 6 reports that are critical for every manufacturer. Vorne Industries helps manufacturers increase productivity, and to do that, we measure OEE. From that, we end up with a lot of data. So over the years, we've learned very interesting and innovative ways to use data to help us drive productivity. So today, we're going to give you a presentation that's including both PowerPoint slides and also real-time data analytics to demonstrate these features. We're going to have 3 presenters today. Our first presenter will be talking about the 6 different forms that every manufacturer needs. Our second presenter will be showing you how to manipulate and use these forms in the form of dashboards to create actionable information. And our third presenter will show you how to manipulate the underlying data to gain new insights from your information. Now, our first presenter is going to be my colleague, Kirsten Park. Kirsten has been with Vorne for a little over a year. She's what we call a customer success manager. But her entire career has been in the industrial world, and she credits herself as being the strongest welder at Vorne Industries. Our next presenter is my colleague, Matt Metalman. Matt Metalman has been with Vorne for a little over 7 years, and he really likes helping customers create the things he uses every day. So things like dog treats and also ice cream. Our third presenter, Kelsey Laughlin, has been with Vorne for a little over a year. And she helps our customers both domestically and internationally leverage their Vorne systems to drive productivity within their organization. Now, you'll notice that everyone's been muted. We invite you to submit questions to us via chat. Throughout the meeting, we'll be monitoring the questions, and at the end of the meeting, we'll be answering the generalized questions that apply to a larger audience. Additionally, though, we'll be happy to set up one-on-one conversations if you have more specific questions that apply to your team directly. So we've got our contact information up right now. At the end of the presentation, we'll have it up again, and then we'll be emailing you a handout and our contact information tomorrow. So with that, I would like to hand it over to my colleague, Kirsten, to take you through the 6 reports every manufacturer needs.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. So to start off, tables are defined as a set of facts or figures systematically displayed in rows, but often with a heavy emphasis on columns. And it's having a rich set of column types that can elevate the use of tables in our reporting. Really briefly, we're going to review the 6 table types that you'll see in your handouts, and they'll be delivered after the presentation. So to start, summarize. We're able to summarize your data by aggregating metrics across various dimensions. Visualizing your data by creating comprehensive and colorfully curated views that are dense with information. Exploring your data by utilizing a visual hierarchy to discover root causes and see cumulative totals. Sequencing events like part runs to see a detailed chronological view of information. Ranking events or sorting rows to really help focus our attention. And exporting large amounts of data to external environments for further analysis. Now, before we move deeper into the reporting, it's important to note that data is typically leveraged in 2 different ways. The first being more informative. These tend to be more static. Think like looking at predefined KPIs on a weekly report. We are continually reviewing new data as it comes in, but typically in the same format and over the same duration of time. The second being interactive. These are reports that can be manipulated and easily adjusted as discussions progress or new questions arrive, like in a morning Gemba walk or a shift handover meeting. Now, diving into these 2 concepts is what we're going to focus on today to try to bring value back to your reports. But I want to emphasize that there will never be one magic report to meet all of your needs. But by taking a holistic approach to reporting, using both informative and iterative practice, practices to change your reporting as different trends unfold within your data is what's going to set your teams up for success and ultimately champion change. We're also going to review a systematic approach to utilizing your data called IDA, which stands for Information, Decision, and Action. So with that, our first report example highlights that the ability to summarize data well can create an indispensable report. When we're able to find the balance between transparency and simplicity, we create a really powerful tool for our stakeholders. And we make that possible by giving you just enough information along with visual indicators to provide context. The visual indicators provide, a range that values alone cannot display. Here we're looking at high-level OEE information with the three main drivers of OEE also being listed. So our availability, performance, and quality. Now, this is for all of our work centers over the past week. And it's pretty easy for us to determine that, our bottling line in Chicago has really been struggling. And this is going to be really kind of the starting point for our next report. So we know there's an issue. Let's try to dive a little deeper. This second report allows us to take a more detailed view of the data, not only for our bottling line, but also from a plant level, shift, and parts. If needed, we're able to have the seamless experience to be able to easily maneuver within a large subset of data from the macro to the micro level. What this does is it allows this report to be really useful in meetings where root cause investigation is being done. We can literally follow the breadcrumbs and have this report kind of interact with us. You'll see that a little bit later on as well. Now, from this, it might be worth taking a little bit deeper dive into our part information and looking at a little bit different of a subset of metrics. So with this third report, we chose to view our information by part. We sorted it by OEE, so we can see, part B is really kind of our outlier in this situation. But in our fourth column, I want you to note the metric list that we used. We are re-summarizing our OEE factors that we saw in the first report in a more compact view. We get the visual indicators with the heat map colors, but we also are adding an additional layer with the bar graphs. So we can contextualize on another level where our performance is really lacking. In the last column for top losses, we're also able to immediately see what events, whether a singular event or multiple, are really contributing to these losses. I like to think of this report as it's really kind of doing the work of helping to identify the issues. That way you can react faster and make decisions about what to do with this data. Now, switching gears a little bit, I want you to consider viewing your data by production state in chronological order. This report can be really helpful whenever you need a methodical, step-by-step evaluation of the different events to offer perspective as to how different production states are influencing one another, or if we're trying to look for repeating patterns between various production states. You'll see that for every meal and break production state that we have listed, example, it's immediately followed by a down event of no operator with its associated duration for that specific event. Hypothetically, if there were 3 breaks in a shift that were all followed by a 5-minute down event, multiplied by 3 shifts a day, you would recover 45 minutes of production per line per day. This is highlighting the low-hanging fruit that you can really act upon and really try to reduce downtime. This is to help start a conversation to say, how can we help operators get back to the line on time after their meals and breaks? Do we need to reevaluate our shutdown and startup procedures, or do we need to implement some type of rotational schedule? These are the kinds of questions that these kinds of reports can help you get started and really starting to have great conversations around them. Another really effective way to use reporting is to rank changeover events by the minimum duration for a specific reason. What this does is it also helps create a discovery conversation around best practices and reducing planned downtime on the line. You're able to start a discussion with operators to say what went particularly well during this event. What factors contribute to some of these longer material changeovers? You want to be able to identify repeatable and trainable processes to improve your productivity in the long term. Now, lastly, we have a more simple report constructed of really detailed and dense information. This can be used for in-depth data investigations or used as a base export where your data is aligned to the needs of the external environment. Simply put, this raw information can be exported into a convenient file type and leveraged in something like a SQL database, ultimately to be used for integration purposes with your various systems. And lastly, this concept of IDA. IDA is a way to take an active and action-oriented approach to your historical data. Now, the prerequisite for IDA to work for decision-making is to have accurate and correct data, which requires proper configurations of your systems and consistent training, and that's a whole other webinar topic in itself. But today, we're trying to focus on bridging the gap between information and decision-making. And by utilizing these 6 types of reports, we can kind of sum them up to say the best reports for strategic decisions are typically going to be using some combination of summarizing and visualizing. For tactical meetings, you might be using the explore and sequence reports, as well as the export functionality for anything external you want to do. And from an operational perspective, you could use any combination of visualizing, sequencing, and raking. Now, keep in mind, this is a very general rule. And as the story of your data really unfolds, you're going to need to leverage the best practices in both an informative and interactive way in order to make the most informed decisions on all level. And once you can set your teams up with the right reporting, you're setting yourselves up for success, to make better decisions and to drive change in order to drive results. If you want to learn more information on IDA, there is a link in the PowerPoint, or if you want to take a further look, there's more information on our website. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to take you through building dashboards.
All right, thank you, Kirsten. So now that we've reviewed the various table types, let's discuss the importance of structuring your dashboards. Structuring dashboards in a clear and concise manner is essential to conveying data and driving action. We recommend combining headings, sections, columns, and individual widgets to create simple yet eloquent reports. Let's break them down into their individual components. Headings organize and quickly convey the main topic of a section by providing a point of reference for the user. Sections group similar or complementary data into a consolidated area that can be moved in conjunction with one another on a page. Columns optimize the layout of widgets to best fit the data and your dashboard template. And finally, widgets are the mainstay of dashboards, conveying production KPIs in various formats. Now, we understand architecting the perfect report can be challenging. And one of our best tips is actually to fight the initial urge to create an all-in-one report and start simple. In most cases, less is more. So let's review a simple yet powerful one-pager that will effectively draw attention to where it is needed most. Here's a variation of the parts table that we previewed earlier. Adding a heat map of OEE to the part dimension allows you to quickly identify wins or isolate exceptions. Part I and H reported excellent OEE scores, while Part M ran poorly. We had columns for count totals, production times, and OEE factors, providing context for each run. And finally, the inclusion of the comments column provides additional insight that can be leveraged in more of a lessons learned fashion. For example, Part H started with a PM that proactively identified a potential mechanical issue, averting major downtime. Part M noted an opportunity to improve the setup procedure and reduce startup rejects. So this is a perfect example of leveraging poka-yoke, or the Japanese term for error proofing, in your continuous improvement efforts. Lastly, you can get creative by combining 2 identical tables while setting contrasting time ranges for an intuitive comparative analysis between datasets. Using this methodology allows data to drive business decisions on an operational, tactical, and strategic level. Setting the time range to compare shorter time horizons, such as by shift, day, or week, empowers your operators and line leads to make quick, real-time adjustments for immediate impact. as opposed to setting the time range to compare broader horizons, such as by month, quarter, or year, which provides insight into longer trends and performance indicators for setting strategy and goals moving forward. In either scenario, we are able to leverage tabular data structured for the appropriate audience to identify and resolve business problems. Kelsey, on to you.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I know everyone is really excited to get started and see how we can create these amazing tables that both you and Kirsten have been talking about. And that's what we're doing here. We're leveraging the Excel interface here. I have opened up my live control tray on a table that I created, and these are the controls that we're going to discuss. So this table is basic but very powerful. It's showing me part information. It is slightly expanded if you were to just go and add in a table, and I hope some of you are maybe doing this on your screen yourselves. You would see shift rows and OEE as our column. To get from this to this, I did some very simple but powerful moves. And for my row control, I chose, instead of focusing on the shift, to focus on the part as my dimension. There are a lot of row options. We'll discuss those more when we talk about enriched tables. But for now, we're going to basically have a part instead of shift. And then for my columns, and this is the column control, I chose to add some metrics. And I said add column and then metric. I knew exactly what I wanted, so I used the search bar, but you could obviously go in and find those as well. And so now from the default table, when I added the widget, I have a good part summary table. So as Kirsten was talking earlier about being able to summarize data, this is going to show me everything happening for these parts on line 3. That's what this means up here. And my time range being yesterday, and that would be Wednesday. So it's going to give me that specific information. If I want to expand the scope, which I've decided I'm going to do, I want to look a little farther out. I can do so using the enterprise control. This allows me to see any of my any of my lines that are within my hierarchy. I can also choose to look at more than one line. I could choose a plant, or in this case, I'm going to choose my entire hierarchy. I'm going to go ahead and click there. And now I've got information for all of the parts run across all of my lines summarized for me. I can also increase my scope in a different way. This is the time range selector. And while there's one that controls the entire dashboard within which I'm working, there's also one here for the individual widget. So instead of following the page time range selector, I'm going to choose to take a look at more data. I'm going to choose to look at the last 7 days worth of data. And you'll notice up here in the top right corner, it's showing specifically that I'm looking at more data. It's showing up here that I'm looking at more data than I was originally. Now I have a part summary for the last 7 days across all of my assets. And this can get pretty big. So we did start large, which was my intention, but now I'd like to focus in and do some exploring. And this is, again, something Kirsten talked about. So in order to achieve that, what I'm going to do is use our group control. Clicking here, I have 3 options. The first is event. That would give me an individual part run for each of these, which would be a lot of information because, of course, I'm looking at 4 different units and I'm looking at 7 days. Aggregated is what we're looking at now, perfect for summarizing tables. And then there's hierarchical, which is what I'm going to choose. And it's basically a combination of the 3, of the previous 2. So I'm going to go ahead and click there, and this is going to give me a really good outline that I can drill down into. The collapse to level control was grayed out before, but now that I'm in hierarchical view, it's going to allow me to really quickly navigate what I've created here. So I can start by looking, for example, just at my work centers. And again, this is more of a summarized view. And then I can get very, very detailed by going in here. And I can take a look at all of those parts specifically. Part runs, when they happen, this gives me the start time. If I just wanted the start time and not to organize this, I would have chosen that event grouping. I know often people are looking for where to find the start time. That would be the event grouping. Now, this is a lot of information and I'm able to really take a look and narrow in. I can use the sort tool. Earlier, we were talking about sequencing and ranking. So I can look chronologically with my one-click sorting here. Within each part, I can see the part runs, or I can go ahead and rank and say, okay, we're looking at some issues with this in particular. So this is single click sorting that I've been showing you. We also do have a sort control, which will allow you to add in additional sorting rules. And then you obviously prioritize them. I'm going to go ahead and come back up to my part. And as you'll notice, part M and part N having some difficulties here. So I'll use my filter control to really focus in on those. And I'm going to choose part M for Matt, our earlier discussions. And I can see that part M is having difficulty a lot on line 2, but it's doing okay on line 1. A lot of issues on line 3, but it's doing well on line 4. That's a great place to start. So maybe these processes are different, or maybe there's something that line 2 is doing wrong. Maybe not wrong, but line 1 is certainly doing better that we could be looking into here. So there's a lot of powerful live controls that we have here. The last two I'm going to talk about before we look at enriched tables are these last two here, the duplicate and export. These are particularly helpful when exporting to an external environment, and Kirsten already covered that, looking at SQL databases, etc. The other one is the duplicate, and this would really allow me to do what Matt had demoed at the very end, which is looking at side-by-side or comparison data. So when you have something that you really like and you want to look at it in a different context, simply clicking duplicate. And I'm also going to use some of these controls that Matt talked about earlier. So I'm going to make this a 2-column within what I have here. And I'm going to be looking at the last 7 days over here, but I'm going to use my individual time range selector to simply look at last shift on this one. And this is a good way to be able to compare these side by side, which is one of the things that can really help looking at year-to-date data, next monthly data, or last week versus this week can all be accomplished by combining the duplicate control and the time range selector. So if you do have any questions, please remember you can put those in the chat and Adam will be monitoring those. We'll talk about them after. The next example I want to share with you is what we call an enriched table. As you can see, there's a lot of information. It's taking up just one screen, but there's so much here that I can get. And I'm going to show you how to take that default table that we had earlier and make it look like this. So I'm just going to add in a widget. And this is my default table, shift data and OEE percentage. I'm going to start the same way I did before by going in and clicking on the row. And instead of looking at shift, I want to look at each individual shift hour. So I'm going to add the dimension and choose hour. Now for these row options, I can limit the number of rows if I only wanted to look at a little bit and save real estate, or I can put in a large number and make sure I have lots of space, and this is going to take up the page. In this case, I don't need to do either of those because I've only got 9 rows. But I am going to begin with a heat map for efficiency, and this is how we get that coloring at the beginning of each of these. I'm also going to include a totals row. I click apply, you'll start to see that this bottom table is resembling, nowhere near as complex, but it's starting to resemble what this one up here did. The rest of this enrichment we're actually going to find using the column control. So I'm going to go in here and instead of looking at basic OEE, I'm going to add in what we call a metric list. So we have metrics, which are what we added into our previous table, and then we have a metric list. This allows you to include multiple lines of data within a single cell, which can really include a lot more. I'm also going to be leveraging what we call a metric set. So for my first one here, I know what I'm looking for. I'm going to type it in, and I'm looking for production time detail. This little icon tells me that it's a metric set, and this will tell me what metrics are included in case I'm not sure. Go ahead and click there and you can see that those auto-populated. Now I have the option to change the header text. I won't because I like this. And how to view these metrics, just as text with heat map indicators, and that's only where possible, or with a bar chart. And I'm going to choose a bar chart. Normally I would just continue adding columns, but I want you all to see the change that this has made. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply. And now you can see that those metric lists have really expanded each row, lots more information. We're able to see visually very quickly what's going on here. So I'm just going to continue to add more columns using the same process. Add column, metric list, and then the metrics I'm going to include here are once again going to be a metric set. It's called total count detail, and I'm going to view it with a bar chart. And then I'm also going to add a metric list for our OEE factors. And this one's going to be extra special and extra colorful because when I choose the bar chart, it's also going to give me the heat map indicators since I've defined percentages for these. My very last column here, which is one that Matt talked about quite a bit, is what we call an attention list. So I'm going to go in here and you'll notice again, there are different kinds of columns. I could choose comment, although I won't here, or a dimension, but I'm going to choose the attention list. And there are a couple of different options. These are predetermined, not quite as flexible as the metric sets, because they're looking specifically at our losses. And we'll choose top losses, which includes quality loss, performance loss, and availability loss. And I'm going to click on 4 so I can use all of that space. And now when I click apply, you will see that I have an identical table to what's above, or almost identical table to what's above. I have these super enriched columns, everything going on there. And then the best part is I can still use many of these other controls we already discussed. So for example, my grouping, I can change to event, and that will give me a start time for each of these hours as well as the date. This was an overnight shift, as you can see. And I can do things like say, I want to, in case these are not, color coding is not enough, I can say, well, I want to filter so that I can only see things where the OEE is less than, let's say, 50%. And that'll filter my data. So you can continue to use those controls that we were using previously. There might be questions, so I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Adam, who hopefully can respond to some of those questions for you.
All right. Thank you, Kelsey. So I have been monitoring the chat window throughout the presentation, and we've got a couple of great questions that apply to a larger group of people. The first question that came up from Spiros, and it said, "You show many cases with efficiency more than 100%. How was that?" That refers to efficiency versus OEE. OEE, as many of you are aware, leverages a concept called ideal cycle time, or the theoretical fastest a piece of equipment can run. Efficiency is calculated based off of takt time, which is the customer demand divided by available manufacturing time. So it is possible to have a different takt time from ideal cycle time. So you can produce faster than customer demand. The resulting value would be a score higher than 100%. When you are calculating OEE, a score that is higher than 100% usually means that we have a problem with our calculation, and it'll require some additional investigation. So that's why you'll see a score that's different. In our technology, we use both OEE and efficiency to answer different questions at different times. The next question that came up was, why calculate OEE at all? Why not focus on actual capacity lost in hours and seconds per shift? Our answer is we do both. As Matt had talked about, when we're answering different questions, for example, we might have a more strategic question where we just want to know the OEE because we want to be able to summarize the information of performance. My OEE was for a specific amount of time. Versus a much more granular at the operational or tactical might be, how much time could I recover if I change my productivity. So we will give you data in both ways so that you can see it based upon the question you're asking. And we didn't display it in this presentation today, but if you want to reach out, if anyone has any questions on that, feel free to reach out. Now, tomorrow, we're going to be emailing everyone a handout showing the 6 reports every manufacturer needs. We're going to email you the PowerPoint that we went through today. And we will be emailing the PowerPoint we went through today and also a link to the download of this meeting. Mark just came up with a really good question. Can 2 bar charts be added to the same widget? The answer is no. You would create 2 separate widgets and put them right next to each other. So we're going to hang out. So that's going to conclude our presentation for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us. It really means a lot, and we really appreciate your time. We will be hanging out for a few more minutes answering questions as they come up. But at this point, thank you, everybody, and have a great day.